The Guardian's trail, the morning mist clung to the canopy like a shroud when Marcus Chen first heard about the missing expedition team. He stood in the makeshift command center of the research station, his coffee growing cold in his hand, as Dr. Helena Rodriguez pointed at the map with trembling fingers. "They were supposed to check in yesterday at noon," Helena said, her Portuguese accent thick with worry. 8 people, gone. No radio contact, no emergency beacon, nothing. Marcus studied the map, noting the red X marking their last known position, deep in the Amazon rainforest. He'd been studying the indigenous folklore of the region for 3 years, but this was different. This was real. What were they researching? He asked. Helena hesitated. Logging sites, illegal deforestation. They were documenting evidence for the authorities. She paused, her dark eyes meeting his. "But that's not what worries me most." "What do you mean?" "The local Yanomami guides refused to take them beyond the river bend. They said the forest beyond that point belongs to him." Marcus felt a chill despite the oppressive heat. He knew who she meant. Every indigenous community in the region had stories about the Curupira, the forest guardian with backward feet who protected the jungle from those who would harm it. "You don't actually believe." "I believe the guides know this forest better than anyone," Helena interrupted. "And I believe 8 people don't just vanish without a trace." By noon, Marcus found himself in a dugout canoe, heading upriver with Helena and 2 others, Jake Morrison, an American wildlife photographer with more courage than sense, and Yara, a young Yanomami woman who'd agreed to guide them for twice the usual fee. The forest closed in around them as they traveled, the sounds of civilization fading into a symphony of bird calls, howling monkeys, and the endless drone of insects. Yara sat at the front of the canoe, her back straight, her eyes scanning the shoreline with an intensity that made Marcus uneasy. "How far to their last position?" Jake asked, adjusting his camera equipment. 3 hours, Yara replied without turning. "Maybe 4. The current is strong today." They traveled in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. Marcus found himself replaying the stories he'd collected during his research. The Curupira was said to be a small figure with wild red hair and feet that pointed backward, a trick to confuse hunters who tried to track him. He protected the forest and its animals, leading those with ill intentions astray, sometimes to their doom. But those were just stories. Folklore, cautionary tales to prevent overhunting and deforestation, weren't they? As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Yara suddenly raised her hand. "The boatman cut the motor. There," she whispered, pointing to the shore. A backpack hung from a low branch, swaying gently in the breeze. It was bright orange emergency gear. Marcus's stomach tightened as they paddled closer. Jake reached out and grabbed it, pulling it into the canoe. The name tag read Dr. Richard Brennan in neat handwriting. Marcus knew that name. Brennan was the expedition leader, a respected environmental scientist. "This doesn't make sense," Helena said, examining the pack. "Why would he leave this behind? There's food in here, water purification tablets, a first aid kit." "Look at the shore," Yara said quietly. They turned the muddy bank. Barely visible in the fading light were footprints, small footprints, child-sized, leading into the forest, but they were backward. The toes pointed toward the water, as if someone had walked out of the jungle rather than into it. "It's a trick," Marcus heard himself say. "The Curupira's feet point backward to confuse trackers. If you follow the tracks, you're actually going in the opposite direction." Yara looked at him sharply. "You know the stories. I'm a folklorist. It's my job. Then you know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, that the Curupira only reveals himself to those who threaten the forest. She paused. What was the expedition team really doing here, Dr. Chen? Before anyone could answer, a sound echoed through the trees, a whistle, high and melodious, almost musical. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The color drained from Yara's face. We need to leave, now. But the team Helena started is already lost, Yara said firmly. If we stay, we will be too. The whistle came again, closer this time. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the insects fell silent. Then they heard it. Laughter, a child's laughter, playful and bright, echoing through the darkening jungle. But there was something wrong with it, something that made Marcus's skin crawl. Start the motor, Jake said urgently. Start it now. The boatman yanked the cord once, twice. The motor sputtered, but didn't catch. The laughter grew louder, circling them now. Third pull. Fourth, on the fifth pull, the motor roared to life. They shot away from the shore, but not before Marcus glimpsed something in the shadows between the trees, a small figure with a wild mane of red hair, watching them, smiling. Part 2. Into the green hell they made camp as darkness fell, choosing a sandbar in the middle of the river where they could see anything approaching from any direction. No one spoke much as they set up tents and started a fire. The encounter at the shore had shaken them all. Marcus sat by the fire, his notebook open on his lap, but the pages remained blank. How could you document something that shouldn't exist? He glanced at Yara, who sat apart from the group, her eyes fixed on the dark wall of trees lining the shore. You've seen it before, he said quietly, moving to sit beside her. Haven't you? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was distant. My grandfather was a shaman. He told me stories that his grandfather told him. The Curupira is not evil, Dr. Chen. He is balance. He is consequence. I don't understand. The forest gives, and the forest takes. This is natural. But when men take too much, when they wound the earth and poison the water, when they kill without need. She trailed off. The Curupira ensures balance is restored by killing people, by showing them the truth of their actions. Sometimes, yes, that truth is deadly. She finally looked at him. You're missing team. What were they really doing here? Marcus thought about what Helena had said. Environmental research, documenting illegal logging. But something in Yara's question made him uneasy. Helena, he called out. Come here. The Brazilian scientist approached, her face haggard in the firelight. Tell me exactly what Brennan's team was researching, Marcus said. Helena's eyes darted between them. I told you. Illegal deforestation, the truth. Helena. She sank down onto the sand, looking suddenly older. They were surveying for a mining company, conducting preliminary tests for rare earth minerals. The deforestation story was just cover. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They were going to mine here, in protected territory. The company has connections. Permits were being arranged. Helena's voice cracked. I only found out 2 days ago. I confronted Richard about it. He said it was too late to back out, that they needed to finish the survey. Rare earth mining, Jake muttered. Jesus, that's not just cutting down trees. That's tearing up the whole ecosystem. Poisoning the water table for decades. Yara stood abruptly. Now you understand. The Curupira doesn't hunt innocents. He hunts those who wound the forest's heart. But they're still people, Marcus protested. We have to help them. Help them. Yara laughed bitterly. Dr. Chen, you cannot help them. The choice was made when they entered the forest with greed in their hearts. The Curupira has already judged them. A scream split the night. They all froze. It had come from upriver, from the direction they'd been heading. A man's scream, raw with terror, suddenly cut short. That was human, Jake whispered. Without discussion, they were moving, dousing the fire, scrambling into the canoe. The boatman protested in rapid Portuguese, but Helena overrode him. They had to investigate. The motor seemed obscenely loud in the darkness as they headed upriver, spotlights cutting through the gloom. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. This was insane. They should call for help, wait for dawn, anything but this. But another scream echoed through the night, and Helena pushed the throttle forward. They found the second camp. 10 minutes later, the tents were shredded, equipment scattered across the clearing as if a tornado had hit. But it wasn't a tornado. As their lights swept the scene, Marcus saw the claw marks on the tent fabric, too small to be jaguar, too deliberate to be any animal he knew. There, Jake pointed. A figure stumbled out of the tree line, a woman, her clothes torn, blood streaming from cuts on her arms and face. She collapsed at the water's edge, and Marcus jumped out to help her, splashing through the shallows. Dr. Sarah Mills, Helena breathed, recognizing her. She was Brennan's second in command. Sarah's eyes were wild, unfocused. She clutched at Marcus's shirt. Backward, she gasped. The tracks are backward. We followed them. We followed them deeper, and then she began to sob. The trees started moving. The vines grabbed Carlos. They pulled him up into the canopy, and we heard him screaming. How many of you are left? Marcus asked gently. I don't know. We scattered when it started. Richard went mad. He said he could hear children singing. He ran into the forest, and we couldn't stop him. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. It's playing with us, the Curupira. It's hunting us like we hunted the forest. A whistle, closer than before. That same playful, wrong sound. Get her in the boat, Yara commanded. We need to leave, now. But Sarah dug her heels into the mud. No, we have to find the others. We have to. The trees erupted with movement. Monkeys poured out of the canopy, hundreds of them, shrieking and howling. Birds exploded from the branches in a dark cloud. The forest itself seemed to be fleeing, and then Marcus saw him, standing at the edge of the clearing, illuminated by their spotlights, was a boy, or something that looked like a boy. No more than 4 feet tall, with a wild mane of flame-red hair and skin the color of mahogany. He was naked except for a loincloth woven from vines, and his feet were on backward. The Curupira smiled at them, and Marcus felt his sanity begin to slip. The smile was too wide, too knowing. Those ancient eyes in a child's face held the weight of centuries. You came for them, the Curupira said, his voice like wind through leaves, speaking Portuguese with an accent. Marcus couldn't place or, perhaps speaking directly into their minds, words taking shape in whatever language they understood. The ones who would wound my forest, bleed my rivers, poison my children. They're human beings, Helena said, her voice shaking. Whatever they plan to do, they don't deserve. The Curupira's head tilted at an impossible angle. Does the forest deserve to die for their greed? Do the animals deserve to choke on poison? Do the tribes who have lived here for thousands of years deserve to watch their home destroyed? He took a step forward, and Marcus noticed that his backward feet left forward-pointing tracks in the mud. Another trick. I am the consequence. They invited. The Curupira continued. I am the debt they must pay. I am the forest's justice. Where are the others? Marcus found his voice. Where's Dr. Brennan? The Curupira pointed into the forest, following their own greed. I showed them gold in the streams, rare minerals in the rocks. They dig and dig, but they dig their own graves. He laughed, that child's laugh that wasn't quite right. Do you want to save them? Then follow. But no, this the forest takes what it is owed. He turned and walked into the jungle, his backward feet carrying him forward, leaving a trail of confused tracks. After 3 steps, he vanished as if he'd never been there. We can't follow him, Yara said firmly. It's a trap. Everything about the Curupira is a trap. But Sarah was already splashing toward shore. Richard, he might still be alive. I can't leave him. Sarah, wait. Helena called, but the woman had already disappeared into the trees. Marcus looked at the others. Jake was pale, his camera hanging forgotten round his neck. Yara's face was set in grim resignation. Helena looked torn between scientific rationality and growing horror. We came here to find them, Marcus said quietly. We can't stop now. Then we will all die, Yara said simply. But I can see you have already decided. Very well. I will guide you. But when the Curupira comes for his due, do not say I didn't warn you. They gathered their gear and followed Sarah's path into the forest. Behind them, the river flowed on, indifferent to their fate. Above them, the canopy closed, like a mouth swallowing its prey. The hunt was on, but who was the hunter, and who was the prey? Part 3. The truth in the trees, the forest at night, was a different world. Their flashlight beams cut through darkness so complete it felt solid, revealing glimpses of a green hell that seemed to shift and breathe around them. Marcus stayed close to Yara, who moved through the undergrowth with practiced ease despite her obvious fear. The Curupira smiled at them, and Marcus felt his sanity begin to slip. The smile was too wide, too knowing. Those ancient eyes in a child's face held the weight of centuries. You came for them, the Curupira said, his voice like wind through leaves, speaking Portuguese with an accent. Marcus couldn't place or perhaps speaking directly into their minds, words taking shape in whatever language they understood. The ones who would wound my forest, bleed my rivers, poison my children. They're human beings, Helena said, her voice shaking. Whatever they plan to do, they don't deserve. The Curupira's head tilted at an impossible angle. Does the forest deserve to die for their greed? Do the animals deserve to choke on poison? Do the tribes who have lived here for thousands of years deserve to watch their home destroyed? He took a step forward, and Marcus noticed that his backward feet left forward-pointing tracks in the mud. Another trick. I am the consequence. They invited. The Curupira continued. I am the debt they must pay. I am the forest's justice. Where are the others? Marcus found his voice. Where's Dr. Brennan? The Curupira pointed into the forest, following their own greed. I showed them gold in the streams, rare minerals in the rocks. They dig and dig, but they dig their own graves. He laughed, that child's laugh that wasn't quite right. Do you want to save them? Then follow. But no, this the forest takes what it is owed. He turned and walked into the jungle, his backward feet carrying him forward, leaving a trail of confused tracks. After 3 steps, he vanished as if he'd never been there. We can't follow him, Yara said firmly. It's a trap. Everything about the Curupira is a trap. But Sarah was already splashing toward shore. Richard, he might still be alive. I can't leave him. Sarah, wait, Helena called, but the woman had already disappeared into the trees. Marcus looked at the others. Jake was pale, his camera hanging forgotten around his neck. Yara's face was set in grim resignation. Helena looked torn between scientific rationality and growing horror. We came here to find them, Marcus said quietly. We can't stop now. Then we will all die, Yara said simply. But I can see you have already decided. Very well, I will guide you. But when the Curupira comes for his due, do not say I didn't warn you. They gathered their gear and followed Sarah's path into the forest. Behind them, the river flowed on, indifferent to their fate. Above them, the canopy closed like a mouth swallowing its prey. The hunt was on, but who was the hunter and who was the prey? Part 3. The truth in the trees. The forest at night was a different world. Their flashlight beams cut through darkness, so complete it felt solid, revealing glimpses of a green hell that seemed to shift and breathe around them. Marcus stayed close to Yara, who moved through the undergrowth with practiced ease despite her obvious fear. The tracks, Jake whispered, pointing his light at the ground. They're everywhere. He was right. The forest floor was covered with small, backward footprints, crisscrossing in every direction. Some seemed to lead in circles. Others disappeared into tree trunks or ended abruptly in the middle of clearings. Don't follow any of them, Yara warned. That's what he wants. We navigate by the moss and the stars, not by his tricks. But after 20 minutes of pushing through the dense vegetation, even Yara looked uncertain. The stars were invisible through the canopy, and Marcus had the growing suspicion that the trees themselves were moving when they weren't looking. There, Helena's light found something hanging from a branch's shirt. The company logo was still visible on the pocket. Then they heard the singing. It was children's voices, high and sweet, singing in a language Marcus didn't recognize, though somehow he understood the meaning behind the words. A lullaby about the forest, about growing things, about the cycle of life and death, and life again. It's beautiful, Helena murmured, taking a step toward the sound. Yara grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. Don't listen. The Curupira can make you hear anything. He gets inside your mind, finds what you want most, and uses it to lead you astray. But the singing continued, and Marcus found his feet moving almost of their own accord. What he wanted most. He saw Anna's face in his mind, his sister, dead from cancer 3 years ago. The reason he'd buried himself in research, in stories, in anything to escape the grief. Marcus' voice seemed to come from far away. Marcus, fight it. He blinked, realizing he'd walked 30 feet from the group, heading toward a gap in the trees where moonlight somehow penetrated the canopy. And there, in that shaft of silver light, he saw Anna. She smiled at him, beckoning. "I've missed you, little brother. You're not real," he whispered. "Does it matter?" She laughed, the sound he'd thought he'd never hear again. "Come. Let's walk like we used to." Remember when we were kids, exploring the woods behind our house? This is just like that. Come on." His foot moved forward. Then Jake crashed into him, knocking them both to the ground. "Snap out of it. Man, there's nothing there." Marcus blinked, and Anna vanished. In her place stood the Curupira, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Your sister," the creature said thoughtfully. "Such grief, such love. The forest knows about loss to Marcus Chen. Every tree that falls, every stream that runs dry, every animal that dies from poisoned water. These are the forest's siblings, the forest's children." He crouched down, his backward feet somehow keeping perfect balance. "Now do you understand? Your pain for one lost soul, while the world burns around you. Imagine the forest's pain, multiplied by millions." "That doesn't justify murder," Marcus said. "Murder? No, I merely show people the truth of their actions. What they do with that truth." The Curupira shrugged. "That is their choice." A scream echoed through the Triacera's voice. The Curupira's head snapped in that direction, and he grinned. "She's found him. Would you like to see?" He was gone before they could answer, melting into the shadows. They had no choice but to follow, running now, crashing through ferns and vines. Marcus's lungs burned, branches whipped his face, but he kept going. They burst into a clearing lit by an eerie phosphorescent glow from fungi growing on fallen logs. Sarah knelt in the center, cradling a figure in her arms. Dr. Richard Brennan was alive, but barely. His hands were bloody, fingernails torn off, and he was mumbling incoherently. As they got closer, Marcus realized what he was saying. "So much gold, so much will be rich. Just need to dig deeper, deeper around him." The ground was torn up where he'd been digging with his bare hands, but there was no gold, no rare minerals, just dirt and roots and worms. "What did you do to him?" Helena demanded, spinning to search for the Curupira. The Guardian's voice came from above them, from the trees themselves. "I did nothing. I showed him what his heart desired. Gold, wealth, success. He did the rest himself. The greed was always there. I simply gave it form." "This is torture," Marcus said. "Yes." The Curupira dropped from a branch, landing lightly on his backward feet. "Like the slow torture of watching your home destroyed, like dying of poison in a contaminated river, like starving because the animals have fled or died. This is consequence made visible. Where are the others?" Sarah sobbed. "Please, just tell me where the others are." The Curupira's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Two are dead, killed by their own fear. They ran from shadows and fell into ravines. One remains beyond that ridge." He pointed. "She has a chance. Unlike the others, she came to stop this expedition. She has tried to leave offerings, to apologize to the forest. I am considering her case." Hope sparked in Sarah's eyes. "Maria. That's Maria. Take me to her, please. The choice is yours," the Curupira said. "But no, this Dr. Brennan is too far gone." His mind broke when he saw the truth of his greed. "You can carry him, or you can save yourself and Maria. The forest does not permit both." "That's not a choice," Helena protested. "It is precisely the choice your kind makes every day," the Curupira replied. "Profit or planet, convenience or consequence, greed or balance." His ancient eyes fixed on each of them in turn. "You came into my forest judging me. But I am not the villain of this story. I am the story itself, the truth your civilization tries so hard to ignore. Marcus stepped forward, an idea forming. You said the forest knows loss. You said it feels pain. Yes, then you understand mercy. You understand that people can change, can learn. If you kill everyone who makes a mistake, who threatens the forest, where does it end? We're all guilty. Everyone who uses plastic, who drives a car, who eats beef from cleared rainforest, do we all deserve to die? The Curupira tilted his head, considering an interesting argument. But words are easy. Actions matter. Then let us act, Marcus said. Give us a chance to make this right. We'll expose the mining company. We'll make sure this location is protected. You'll do what humans always do. The Curupira interrupted. Promise change. Then forget your promises when it becomes inconvenient. But there was something different in his voice, not quite doubt, but perhaps curiosity. However, I will offer you a chance, a test. What kind of test? The Curupira smiled. The sun will rise in 4 hours. If you can carry Dr. Brennan and find Maria and return to the river before dawn, I will let you all leave. I will not trick you astray. I will not trick you. A straight path, your own choices, your own strength. And if we don't make it, then you stay. The forest keeps what it claims. Jake laughed bitterly. That's impossible. We don't even know where we are. I do, Yara said quietly. She'd been silent through the exchange, but now she stepped forward. I can get us back to the river. But carrying an injured man through this terrain in 4 hours, she looked at Brennan's broken form. It will be close. Why are you doing this? Marcus asked the Curupira. Why give us a chance at all? The Guardian looked up at the canopy, where the first birds were beginning their pre-dawn songs. Because even the forest believes in second chances. Seeds fallen on stone can split rock and grow into mighty trees. Perhaps humans can do the same. He looked back at Marcus. Or perhaps you'll fail, and the forest will have its due. Either way, balance will be served. He vanished, and they were left alone with their impossible choice. Part 4. The race against dawn. They fashioned a stretcher from vines and branches, working with desperate speed as precious minutes ticked away. Brennan was dead weight, still mumbling about gold and minerals, his eyes seeing something none of them could perceive. Sarah refused to leave his side, helping to secure him to the stretcher, even as tears streamed down her face. Northeast, Yara said, checking the sky through a gap in the canopy. We move northeast to the ridge, find Maria, then east to the river. 3 miles, maybe 4. 4 hours. She looked at their makeshift stretcher, at Brennan's condition, at the dense forest around them. We'll need to move like the jaguar, fast and sure. Then let's move, Helena said grimly. They ran. Marcus and Jake took the front of the stretcher, Sarah and Helena the back. Yara lead, cutting a path with her machete, reading the forest in ways Marcus could only marvel at. Every few hundred yards they switched positions, fresh arms taking the stretcher's weight. The forest seemed to watch them. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that every tree, every vine, every creature was an eye reporting back to the Curupira. Was he really giving them a fair chance, or was this just another game? There, Yara pointed ahead. The ridge rose before them, steeper than Marcus had hoped. They'd have to climb it carrying Brennan. We'll never make it, Jake panted. We don't have a choice, Sarah said fiercely. Maria is up there. We're not leaving her. The climb was brutal. Vines that seemed solid gave way under their weight. Loose rocks tumbled beneath their feet. Brennan's stretcher caught on every branch and root, but they climbed, driven by desperation and the lightning sky. At the top, they found Maria Cortez huddled against a massive kapok tree. She was building something, a small shrine of sorts, with carved sticks and woven leaves and tropical flowers arranged in careful patterns. "Maria," Sarah called out. The woman spun, her face lighting up with hope and fear. "Sarah, how did you?" Then she saw Brennan and paled. "Oh God, Richard, what happened to him?" "The Curupira happened," Helena said, "but we don't have time to explain. Can you walk?" "I think so. My ankle's twisted, but I can manage." She gestured to her shrine. "I was trying to apologize, to make an offering. My grandmother was Guarani. She taught me some of the old ways. I thought if I could just..." "It worked," Marcus interrupted. "That's why you're still alive," the Curupira said. "You had a chance, because you tried to make amends." He checked his watch, his heart sinking. "But we have 2 hours to reach the river, and we're not even halfway." They started down the ridge's far side, Maria limping between Sarah and Helena, the men carrying Brennan. The descent was harder than the climb. Gravity worked against them, threatening to send them tumbling into ravines that seemed to open like mouths in the pre-dawn darkness. And then Jake slipped. His foot caught on a root, and he went down hard, losing his grip on the stretcher. Marcus tried to compensate, but the weight was too much. The stretcher tipped, and Brennan tumbled off, rolling down the slope. "No!" Sarah screamed, scrambling after him. They slid and stumbled down the incline, finally catching Brennan 20 feet below. He was unconscious now, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. Sarah checked his pulse. "He's alive." "Barely." Marcus checked his watch. 1 hour and 20 minutes left. "We're not going to make it," Jake said, voicing what they all knew. "Then we die trying," Yara said simply. They rebuilt the stretcher and pushed on. The forest began to change as they descended, the trees growing larger, the undergrowth thicker. And then Marcus noticed something odd. The bird calls had stopped. The insects had gone silent. "Yara," he called softly. She held up her hand, stopping them all. In the growing light, they could see the forest ahead, and it was moving, not swaying in the wind. Moving, growing, the vines writhed like snakes, extending toward them. Trees bent and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "He lied," Helena whispered. "The Curupira lead. He said he wouldn't trick us." But then Maria spoke up, her voice trembling. "No, this isn't him. This is the forest itself. It's testing us, or maybe trying to keep us." "The forest is alive," Yara said, awe and fear mixing in her voice. "Truly alive. The Curupira isn't controlling it. He's part of it." "How do we get through?" Jake asked. Maria stepped forward, still limping, and began to sing. The words were in Guarani, ancient and beautiful. She raised her hands, palms out, approaching the writhing vegetation. "She's asking permission," Yara breathed. "The old way, asking the forest for passage." For a long moment, nothing happened. The vines continued their hypnotic dance. The trees creaked and groaned. Then slowly, a path began to clear. Not wide, just barely enough for them to pass single file. "Move," Maria commanded, "before it changes its mind." They hurried through the living corridor of vegetation, leaves brushing their faces, vines reaching out, but never quite touching them. It felt like walking through the ribcage of some vast creature, feeling its breath and heartbeat all around them. And then they were through, stumbling into a familiar clearing, their first campsite. The sandbar was visible through the trees, the river flowing beyond it, catching the first rays of the rising sun. "We made it," Sarah gasped. "Oh God, we actually made it." But Marcus checked his watch, and his heart sank. 15 minutes late. The sun's rising, waiting for the Curupira to appear, waiting for the forest's judgment. Instead, they heard clapping. The guardian emerged from behind a ceiba tree, his backward feet leaving impossible tracks in the mud. He was clapping slowly, and for the first time his smile seemed almost genuine. "Impressive," he said. "You're late, yes, but you carried your burden. You didn't leave him behind when it would have been easier. You accepted help from the forest when offered. You worked together." He approached Brennan's unconscious form, studying him. "This one's mind is broken, but he lives. That is more than he deserves." And yet, he looked up at Sarah's tear-stained face. "Love is a powerful force. Even the forest recognizes its worth." "So we can go?" Helena asked cautiously. "Yes, but no, this eye will be watching. If the mining company comes, if any company comes to wound this place, I will know." And next time his expression hardened, "There will be no test, no second chances. We'll make sure it doesn't happen," Marcus promised. "We'll expose what they planned. We'll see that you do." The Curupira turned to leave, then paused. "Marcus Chen, you asked me about mercy, about change. I'll tell you something few know. The forest has already died 10,000 times, burned in ancient droughts, frozen in ice ages. Yet it always comes back, always grows again." He looked back over his shoulder. "The question isn't whether the forest will survive. It will. The question is whether your kind will survive to see it. The forest is patient. Are you hit, walked backward into the jungle, his forward-facing tracks a final paradox, and was gone? Epilogue, seeds of change." 3 months later, Marcus stood in a conference room in São Paulo, watching the news footage on the screen. The mining company's CEO was being led away in handcuffs. The illegal permits had been exposed, the officials who'd approved them arrested. The area where Brennan's team had conducted their survey had been declared a protected reserve, off limits to all industrial activity. "We did it," Helena said beside him, but she didn't sound triumphant, just tired. Marcus understood. Dr. Richard Brennan remained in a psychiatric facility, his mind never having recovered from whatever he'd experienced in the forest. The 2 team members who'd died had become cautionary tales. And Maria, Jake, Sarah, and the rest of them, they'd all been changed by what they'd seen. "Do you still think he's real?" Jake asked, joining them. He'd turned his photos from the expedition into an award-winning documentary about indigenous rights and rainforest protection. Or was it all just, I don't know, mass hallucination? Marcus thought about that question. In the daylight world of cities and law and order, it was easy to dismiss what they'd experienced. The Curupira was folklore, myth, a story. But then he remembered those ancient eyes in a child's face, the forest that moved and breathed, the feeling that he'd encountered something far older and more alien than he could comprehend. "Does it matter?" he finally said. "Real or not, the forest is worth protecting. And if believing in a guardian with backward feet is what it takes for people to care." He shrugged, "Then let them believe." His phone buzzed. A A message from Yara, the first in weeks, found something you should see. The tribe has a new story they're telling about the strangers who came and left but honored the old ways. You're in the songs now, Dr. Chen. The forest remembers. Marcus smiled. Maybe that was the real truth, not whether the Curupira existed, but that the forest itself was alive in ways science couldn't quite measure. That the indigenous people who'd lived there for millennia understood something fundamental that modern civilization had forgotten. That everything is connected. That actions have consequences. That nature is not a resource to be exploited, but a living system of which humanity is just one small part. I'm going back, he announced suddenly, to the research station, to keep documenting the stories, working with the tribes, helping however I can. Helena raised an eyebrow, giving up university tenure. The speaking circuit, you could write a dozen books about what happened, maybe later. Right now, he looked out the window at the sprawling city, the concrete and steel and glass. Right now, I need to be where the stories are still being written, where someone is still listening. That night, as he packed, Marcus found the small carved figure Maria had given him, a Curupira whittled from ironwood, its tiny feet pointing backward. He set it on his desk where he could see it, a reminder, a promise, a warning. Somewhere in the Amazon, the forest breathed and grew and remembered, and in its green cathedral, a small figure with wild red hair and backward feet kept his eternal vigil, protecting what could not protect itself, bringing consequence to those who would wound the world. The Guardian's trail wound on through the centuries, tracks pointing backward to show the way forward. And for those willing to see, willing to change, there was always hope. The forest, after all, believed in second chances. The end